Welcome back to Frigid North Auto. Today we've got a 2019 Ford Expedition Max. It's got the 3.5 EcoBoost in it, and the original concern was it has a coolant leak, and the owner would also like a block heater to be installed. Up here in Alaska, it gets a bit chilly, so it's nice to have those block heaters. And so he wanted that. We found the coolant leak and determined that we needed to order a part, so we withheld on installing the block heater until that part arrived. In doing so, we also found that he had oil sitting up on top of the valve cover on the left side, and so that appears to be coming from the valve cover gasket up front. We're going to go ahead and replace that while we're in there. And so those parts have arrived, so let's get after it. First thing we're going to do is scan it for codes and make sure that we don't generate anything new or any codes at all. Now, last time it was here, I did check for codes just to be sure, and there was several communication codes and some miscellaneous things that are not associated with the job, and it's not here for those reasons. So, but we just want to make sure we don't produce any new codes, because we're going to be in there disconnecting quite a few electrical connectors and whatnot to get that valve cover off. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and scan for codes. Off button. Okay, we're going to check for codes now. So let's do that. Get into the system. Just do a generic code scan. Sometimes this takes a minute. Depending on the vehicle, there's a whole ton of modules in these things. So, I mean, you know, it's not uncommon 12, 18, 20, 30, 40 modules in these cars nowadays. So it takes a little bit for the scan tools to read them anymore. A lot of times with your aftermarket cheap scanners, code readers that you would just pick up for 50 bucks or whatever, they won't even tap into most of the modules. So you might get a engine code or an engine scan real quick, and it comes back, you know, lickety split. The problem is it doesn't scan the majority of the modules on the car, even some pretty important ones like body control modules or airbag modules, etc. So your higher end scan tools, your bidirectional scan tools will read just about everything on there. The only thing that can beat that is the factory scan tool, which will read absolutely everything that's on the vehicle. Okay, we do have a new code that has generated since it's been here. That is a 2601, a P2601, coolant pump A, control circuit performance stuck off. And it's not a current DTC, it's a memory code. Those are the same, those are the same, those are the same. The other ones we're not concerned with. However, the coolant pump A control circuit performance stuck off, we need to keep in mind what that is, because that's new, and we don't want to be accused of setting a code when we didn't. It was already there, but it wasn't here since it was here when we did our checks. So we want to be sure that we addressed it as well. And this is the bummer about automotive, is you're going to be working in on this system, and then now it's got this code that's associated with that system, even though you didn't do anything to generate it, but it's here for that. And now potentially you have a code that wasn't mentioned before because it wasn't here before, and now it's like, oh, well, you were just in there and you caused this to happen. Well, maybe not. But we didn't mess around with any electrical connections whatsoever. All we did was simply take a look at the system to see what was leaking, and that was it. We didn't tear anything apart, we didn't move anything around, we just simply took a gander, and it was a heater hose that's leaking. So I mean, it wasn't anything remotely difficult to get to. So we just need to see what that is and do a little research and see what that code's all about. It might be a jockey pump, like a little helper pump. That's what I'm kind of thinking it is. And so we'll go from here, and we'll note these codes, or this new code, and move on. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to put the vehicle up on the rack so that way we can get it up in the air and drain the coolant. And so this has automated running boards. So you open the door and the running boards come out, and then when you shut the door, they go back up. So that way they can be out of the way. They don't get damaged when you're on the road. Whenever you're putting it on a rack, you need to be sure to deactivate that system because it gives you better clearance for the arms for the rack. And then also if you need to open the door for any reason while it's on the rack, they don't come down and hit the arms. So let's go ahead and deactivate that. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about right there. All right, so we'll go ahead and turn the key on. We know the door is ajar, we know the hood is ajar. Okay, we're gonna go to settings, go to advanced settings, go to vehicle. There's the auto engine off feature. We're gonna go down to running boards, power running boards. Okay, we're gonna close the door so that way they fold back up. And once they do that, then we're gonna come back in here and switch it to off. And then once we're there, we should be able to open the door and not have them come back out. And voila. So that's why you do that. So first thing when you're going to drain the coolant is, one, is make sure it's not hot. You don't want to pop this cap off and have it explode on you. Now, the Fords are pretty good about this. They call this a degas bottle. They can still have pressure though. And so this has been sitting out cold. I ran it a couple times just to do a couple various things for a very short period of time. So there's no pressure at all. If there is, it's very little. So still, you want to open it up slowly. See, there was just a tiny bit of pressure, heard a little hissing. Bad place for that light. Nothing's steel anymore. You can't hook your light up. There you go. Vehicle's up in the air. Nice hose with a some nuts on the end of it to add some weight, and a little brass fitting. That helps to keep the hose straight down as it's hanging from the car. Otherwise, you cut off a piece and it might be like wanting to do the little piggly loop. So this is good for that, and it gives you a decent length to get down in your bucket. And that way, you minimize the amount of splash and dash you have to deal with underneath here. So here we go, let's pull it out. All right, grab my belly pad here. The reason why I like to use these is because this dives into my belly. Hurts, doesn't feel good. So, aluminum, everything's aluminum. Does make it challenging. So, first thing we're going to do is get this cover off and we get the air induction system out of the way. Hello.
You just need a selfie stick, dear.
Huh?
You just need a selfie stick.
Selfie stick?
Yeah. Hi, hello.
Well, the tripod is kind of a selfie stick.
Terry says he wouldn't want to give up a tripod.
Huh?
Terry says, oh, if I have a tripod, I don't want to give it up. If someone else wants it,
That's all right. Pick up another one. Let's see here. Let's get Come on. Oh, it's supposed to be a newer vehicle. These are supposed to come off easy. Helps if I can see what I'm doing though. Get my glasses on here. You know what I mean? Getting old. Can't see anymore. Here we go. See? Just can't see. Grabbing it from the wrong side. How are we gonna get down here? Oh, Liz, way down there. Oh. We have to get that one through the wheel well. All right. Off, and if you break them, not a big deal. You can get them at your local auto parts store. Just these little Christmas tree push pins, and believe me, you will break them. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, there we go. I guess what I can do is like put it on there, and then you guys can see where it's at. I mean, it's pretty simple to see it once you're looking at it yourselves, but there you go. It's way down in there. See that? It's where it attaches to the turbo. All right, going back up top. Someone say, oh, Ford's are terrible. Oh, GM's terrible. Oh, Toyota's terrible. They're all terrible. They all break. And they all have engineers. You know what I mean? So, but I wish engineers would think it takes for the regular guy to get in here and work on this junk. Because oftentimes I think you just don't know. So if you're an engineer and you're watching this, please think about that kind of thing when you're engineering things. Man, there's got to be a better way sometimes. But I do love engineers because they think of some really cool stuff. Guy out of the way. Get all these electrical connectors out of the way. It just makes life a little bit easier trying to work. If they don't want to go, work them easy, back and forth, spraying with some lubricant if you need to, but don't just jam them because you'll break these levers every time.
Christmas tree is huge.
They always look smaller out in the wild. So we went out and cut down a Christmas tree today. And there goes going over the floor. We got our permit, we went out and chopped down a tree. So Christmas is about celebrating life. Life of our Savior. Nothing like celebrating life by going out and cutting down a tree. Come on out. Ah, yeah. There you go. Alright, so there's that. Now I'll do another one. You know, the one that's gonna actually make the big mess. These quick connect fittings they can be a chore. Spray them a little bit. We can break that hose because we are replacing it. So let's just do that. Just cut that thing. Now, if this was a hose that we were not replacing, this would not be the option.
Oh, and it started at page 141 or whatever?
I gotta throw the headlight on. Headlamps are a love-hate relationship. I love them, but I hate to wear them. Oh, God, here we go. So here's what I've been dealing with. This little clip, which is not supposed to look like that. That's supposed to go inside a fitting like that. Okay, so that is supposed to go down inside like that. And then it locks on to your hose. Well, whenever you take these apart, even if they come off easy, this will always stay on the pipe. I have yet to have one that actually came off with the fitting. So it comes off, and then you just simply can bend these tangs back without breaking them and pull it off the pipe. A lot of times though, these will get mangled and break trying to get them off the pipe, because you have to actually, once you get it off, you actually have to fold them back to get this little tab off, and enough to to be able to get a pick in there and pry this away from the little ring that's around the pipe. That way it slides right off. That's what keeps it from blowing off in the first place. This one, so since we're replacing the hose, I just simply cut the retainer portions out, which is these right here. So here's the new hose, and apparently these retainers have been updated. They're a new style. So they're kind of like a fuel line clip in the way that they go on and then they latch on itself, and then this is constantly in place. So it looks like the way you do it to remove them is that this rotates. See? That's designed to rotate and to release it. I really don't see that being any better. Dirt and grime is going to get underneath this, and then it's going to not allow that to rotate, because this is having to cam over. Dirt and grime is going to get in here. You're going to have to be sure to blow that out. You'll probably for sure have to spray some kind of WD-40 or Croil or some kind of lubricant in there, penetrant oil, to get it in there to help break this stuff out. Get your air nozzle in there, blow it all out, and just continually work that. The only other option would be to, if you're going to replace the hose or wind up having to replace it anyway, is get a pick under here and just break them apart. And then hopefully you can spread those apart and get them that way. So we'll see how it goes. See that white in there, deep inside there? Right before that is a black O-ring. And so you got one in each one of these fittings, and that's what seals up against the whatever pipe you're hooking to. Get this puppy back in place and we'll start on the block heater. It's good to get a little bit of coolant and lube these O-rings up a little bit, just so they're not going on there dry and getting torn. So let's do that. And what I've got here is some silicone grease. This is actually used for our house water filter. And so this is what they tell us to use for the O-rings on those. So it's safe for, well, safe for the coolant. You're not going to drink the coolant. But it's designed not to be harmful to the O-ring. So the trick is you got to use something to get that down in there with. So I'm getting low on this stuff. Need another tube. So you get some of that on there. And then just work it along that O-ring. You don't need a ton of it. You just need enough to slime it up a little bit. Now, this. This bad boy goes underneath the other hose. Underneath there. All right, so this hose needs to come up like so, and this one goes down below the AC line. and then up into that bad dog right there. Let's get this wiped down because we don't want to have WD-40 on that fitting. That's what we use to loosen up the grime in that fitting. So we want to wipe this thing down real good. And we're going to go ahead and slide that on there. And slide on, rotate a little bit, and listen for the click. Click. Now, this guy feeds under here, like so. And goes there, like so. And then we'll go underneath. Oh my gosh. Fun times. Okay, I still gotta get those other plastic retainers off. Forget about those. Was a new glove. That's more what those things are supposed to look like when they're intact. And if you can keep these, if you can get them out intact and you're replacing the hose, like I said, it'll come with new ones. Keep these because you might need these later. And over. There we go. So there's another one. So I got 2 for my collection. Yay. So we need to fish these up under here. Like so. And I'm going to slide the back one in first. I know you're totally blocked from seeing that. Where these guys live is no fun. Again, push, twist, and wait for the click. Click. And push, twist, and click. Click. Give it a tug after you get it on there. Make sure you give it a pull test. Because you do not want to think you got it clicked, and you don't. All right. There's a Christmas tree retainer that goes right there. And it goes right inside that. And that's it, okay? And then this bottom one zip ties to that. So it has zip ties that were on there before, and so you just simply zip tie it together. What caused the leak was this clamp right here. You know, they get weak. These are actually clamps, these plastic things. And, you know, they make them at the factory. They mold them in place, boom, and it clamps it. There's a trick you can do. You can actually cut these off with a whiz wheel. Being very careful, you can cut them off and then just simply just trim the hose back and slide it over and use a traditional hose clamp, worm clamp. It works pretty good. We used to do that all the time up on where I used to work in the oil fields because we didn't always have access to these hoses. Special order them, get them in. You know, the truck would be down for a couple weeks or a month, or you know, depending on the availability of the part. 2 weeks was the minimum for the parts that we normally got, even with a hot ship. So we would just take those, slice them with a buzz wheel, and if the hose wasn't damaged, we would go ahead and clamp it in place. If it was damaged, then we would trim the hose and move it forward. But that's not always possible because you got a sharp bend, like right here, you got a sharp bend. So that may not be the option. You may not be able to do that right here because that hose comes all the way down to here, so it's bulged out. That's where your flange is for the pipe. And so you have this sharp turn right here, so you can't do that. And be able to still slide it on there. So you would have to put that clamp in place. Okay. So we're going to zip tie these together. Roll that down a little bit. And then use flush cuts to cut that zip tie flush with the base of it. That way the next guy that reaches through here, and it might be you, doesn't reach through here and get cut like a razor blade. And another thing I like to do is, once I cut them, I like to roll them. Just get them out of the way completely.
and then it's not a problem. And this Christmas tree is broke. I mean, just like they all do. There's not much you can do about that. Except what we're going to do is run a zip tie through here, through that, and that'll secure it in place. And so we'll go ahead and do that. Since that thing's broken anyway, it's going to do absolutely no good whatsoever. Okay. Now, now, this one will zip tie and it'll secure to that little bracket right there. Making sure that bracket goes in between the hoses, not sitting on top of one or the other. That way it doesn't rub a hole in the new hose or the other hose. Okay. Now, same thing happens down here. Okay, these ones here have Christmas trees on them as well. And that goes inside this little bracket right there. Okay, they go up from the bottom. So this goes over those bolt studs, those going through the bottom, and then your doohickeys go attached to here. This snapped off because it's again, bizarre design. Why? So we're gonna epoxy that together, and when we get it back in there, so that way it'll be secure. And so what they had going on from the factory was they just simply zip tied these two together, and then one was secured to the other. And that's a factory thing right there. Okay, and you don't want to do them so tight to where they cut off circulation, right? Oh, you guys okay? Might actually be beneficial to have a cameraman. And this goes back on. Oh, wrong way. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not, but hopefully you do. If not, then I guess we'll just have to take my word for it. And that's what I'm doing. Okay, it's on there. Squeeze in, push in, boom. And it's in place. Now we'll go ahead and tighten our clamp down. Oop, not yet. Sure, the clamp is in the right spot. Yes, ma'am. My belly's hanging out. Well, it's a good thing it's not. Well, good thing the camera's not facing it. Okay, can you let me do this clamp real quick? I'm kind of in a weird spot. Okay, there we go. All right.
So like I said earlier today, we went and got a Christmas tree. So these are ornaments that were purchased by my wife, and they're made by a company here in Alaska called Frontier Designs AK. They're on the internet, you can look them up. And they're a great company, great people. They're friends of ours, so I'll give that plug to them for that. And our kids work for them. So great company to work for, and they're great. And they're locally owned and operated and family run. Anyway, good company, check them out, Alaska made. These little doohickeys here, where they go into the rubber grommets, you'll fight them pushing them in sometimes, so it's good to just put a little bit of grease on there. You can use wheel bearing grease, chassis grease, doesn't matter. Vaseline. This is just some electrical connector grease, not dielectric grease, but connector grease. Dielectric grease gets real sticky and gummy, so I like to use this electrical stuff. And seems to work pretty good, and it helps it slide right down into the grommets really easy. So that way you're not fighting them trying to get them in there. The big fight right now is trying to line that up to the turbo. Okay. Let's get back in here and make all our connections. Get them all connected back up. Again, when putting these back together, same thing as when you take them apart. If they don't want to go, don't force it, find out why, and work its way out. So, the block heater is supposed to go on down here. So we got a bunch of stuff in the way we got to get out of the way. You gotta be real ginger with these things. They will break easy in a heartbeat. And a lot of times you can't get these retainers by themselves. You gotta buy the whole stinking hose. There we go. There's that one. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one. Oh, there we go. Hear that? Had vacuum on it. More Christmas trees to break. Pop that flap out of the way. You can leave the rest of them there, just let it hang. And then you should be able to get in there. Might be able to see the clamp in there. Focus, focus, get right in there. There we go, pops right out. Oh, there we go. Okay. 14 mil Allen head for that block heater plug. It's in the side of the block. And then you just undo that, unscrew that plug, and then that's where the block heater goes into. So we're going to give you guys a view. All right, so where that lives, right there. That's the plug you got to take out, and that's where the block heater threads into the block. All right, so that's set up right there. That's in there pretty good. Oh golly.
want to get messy. Niagara Falls.
Alrighty. So we've got our block heater ready to go in. So that's it right there. Takes a 24 mil socket, or a 15/16 will work as well. And then, so something to think about when you install this. You might be tempted to test it right away to make sure it works. If you don't have coolant in the system and you activate this, this gets pretty dang warm, pretty hot. So if you activate it without coolant in the system, you'll burn it up. And ask me how. Already has the sealant on the threads from the factory. This is an OEM from Ford. And so go down in here. That's it. So that's where it rides, and it calls for a torque of 41 foot-pounds. All right, there we go. All right, here's our cord, and so the way they want this fed is through the bottom portion of the grill here. However, this has grill shutters on it, and so we don't want to route it through there, because then it will get in the way of those shutters when they're trying to open and close. So there's a little flap on the side that will fish it through. So we got a little rubber flap that we can bend out of the way and fish it through. Let's see where that comes out. And let's go ahead and do this now. Take this connector and throw some dielectric grease inside of it, just to help keep the water out of it. And that's what they actually call you to do anyway, so definitely a good thing to have. And it'll help keep the water from getting in there and repelling it. And if it does get in there, then it'll help keep it from corroding. The only problem is be careful with these when you're diagnosing later down the road. With this plugged in, I have reached around this plug and I have been shocked by it before. You know, water got in there and it was on the outside, and yeah, definitely felt that. And yeah, it you know, gives you a little jolt, which doesn't feel good, but so, all right. Okay, there you go. So there it rides, and it doesn't look too bad. It looks flush. All right, now we've got our cord run, and we're going to now dump a little bit of water down in here to clear off any of the coolant that we spilled. And I do have the turbo covered, so it's not gonna fill up with water. First thing we're gonna do is fill up the coolant system, and the way we're gonna do that is with this airlift. And this is a device that hooks onto an adapter that goes onto your reservoir, and you hook your air line to it, and it sucks the air out of the system, and it'll evacuate the system completely of air. This is the best way to do it. They do have a procedure for doing it if you don't have this, which is fill up the system, rev it to 3 grand,
and then let off, and you do that several times, and then top it off. But this makes that a lot easier, so you don't have to do that. Now, I don't have the correct adapter for this. It doesn't use the normal Ford adapter. It's a different one, which I thought I had purchased, but it turned out it's not. So fortunately, I have this universal, and I have it clamped down pretty tight. We'll see if it works. It's the first time I've had to use it. Normally, I just use the adapters that actually fit the truck. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. And I bought this one just in case that one didn't work, because he wasn't sure if that one was going to work or not. Both of them are from Snap-on. This is a Blue Point version of this deal. The other one is actually a Snap-on product. But even then, it didn't tell you exactly which truck it did fit. It said it could fit these, but they weren't 100% sure. So anyway, let's hook this up and see if this thing will work for us. So, and what we do here is we put this end into a catch bucket, because as you suck out the air, you will get some residual coolant that'll come through. As you can see, there's some, I don't know if you can see or not, there's some mist of coolant that's been through this. So you want to throw that in there so that way it catches it, doesn't make a mess of what you just cleaned up. And so we'll just stuff that right there. And then this end is what goes into your bucket when you fill it up. And so first we're going to see if this will actually evacuate the air and hold, because I'm not really sure about this adapter. And the idea is for it to pull this gauge well into the green. And this gauge, I tend to get 26, 27 inches out of it, and that's sufficient vacuum. We're not trying to evaporate any moisture in there. Obviously it doesn't matter because it's coolant. So we don't have to worry about it hitting 28 inches or so. We just need to be sure that we're well in the green, and then when we turn this off, that it actually holds that vacuum. If it doesn't hold the vacuum, it means we have a leak. All right, so here we go. Okay, as you can see, we're well into the green, so we're going to shut off the air supply and see if it holds. Now, like I said, I'm worrisome about this fitting, just because it doesn't, I mean, it's snug and it's tight, but I really didn't like the way that I had to fight it to make it happen. So we're just gonna sit here and watch, and I would normally sit here and watch that gauge anyway for a few minutes and make sure that nothing's leaking out. So once we get it filled, then after that, we would pressure test it and see how it holds under pressure, because right now it's holding under vacuum. And so we want to see how it holds under pressure. And we'll do that with coolant installed, forcing that liquid throughout the system, forcing that liquid against all the components inside, and getting that real good tight seal and seeing how that holds. It's getting pretty late tonight, so tomorrow will be the road test, and that's where we'll drive it, get it up to operating temperature, make sure there's no overheating problems, check it over for leaks, make sure everything's good there. And then if it passes through all that, then we're good to go and kick it. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up the coolant. Okay, so I've got my clean bucket. We're using a concentrate coolant, and this is the specified coolant for this vehicle. If at all possible, I like to use OEM coolants, just because there's so many different colors out there now, and these, you know, this coolant fits all cars, all European cars, all American cars, all Asian cars. I don't know, it's getting really confusing with all the massive amount of coolants out there. I usually use the OEM if I can help it. So we're using a concentrated, and so we'll mix it ourselves. Here's the part number for that universal adapter that I used, and it seems to be working pretty good, so I'm pleased with that. Here's the one that did not work, and it's nothing to say that this is not a good adapter. It's just it doesn't work for this vehicle. And so there's the number there if you're looking to use it on a 3.5 EcoBoost. And whether all the vehicles have the same reservoir, I'm not 100% sure, but that's the number that does not work on a 2019 Expedition Max Limited with 3.5 EcoBoost in it. This does not work. Good product, just doesn't work for this application. So we're gonna put that in the bucket. Now it's important when you charge this to not let this go above the level of the water, of the coolant, because then you'll lose your vacuum immediately. It'll suck it right out and you'll lose everything that you had. And then you'll have to suck it back down again. So we're gonna submerge that. And then we're going to open this briefly enough just to charge this line, and you'll see the coolant going through it. And once it's through the line, then I'll shut it off. And the reason for that is because now there's air in this line right now. And now as soon as we open this, we're gonna incorporate this air back into our system. So we want to get rid of that air, okay? And so what we do is we close it back off, we open this back up and pull it back down. Now we may not notice a vacuum loss, but we're gonna suck it out anyway and get rid of it. Okay, here we go. So just crack it, open it. See, we lost some vacuum. And now we're going to reapply our air and remove the air that we just introduced into there. Now 9 times out of 10, you can do that just fine and not have a problem. But that's just what I like to do. And I don't know if it was this one or another one. It actually recommends that you do this process. And so that's what we're doing right now. And you don't have to run it as long as you did before, just enough time to get that little bit of air that you introduced to the system out of it. All right, so that's plenty long. And now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna try to show you this as it's getting pulled into the system. So I'm gonna open this valve. Here we go. Now it's taking it into the engine, okay? And if you can see that level going down. Slowly but surely, it's depleting. And if you wind up overfilling the reservoir, you can simply just evacuate it with a turkey baster. Or if you're a shop and you have a fluid evacuator, you can use that. And that's typically what I do. Because a lot of times this will wind up being too full at the end. Okay, so there it goes. All right, so we're done filling up the system. Now we're going to evacuate some of the coolant. We're a little bit higher than required. That we got it evacuated, we're going to apply the pressure tester and apply pressure to the system and check for leaks that way. Like I said, this is not my favorite way of doing this. I much prefer to have the adapters that actually fit. What's our PSI rating? 16. Oh, 21. Getting up there in age. 21 PSI is what it calls for. All right. That's a lot of pressure. And ramp it up slowly. Like I said, you're applying pressure to this. And this is what where I really don't like these. Because you can blow that right off there. And so 21 PSI, good grief. That may not hold that. We're gonna do the typical 15. And it's 15 to 16, and we'll keep it there. And that's as far as I'm gonna go with this, because this is just a universal fit. And I don't trust that at all. So I'm gonna keep my hand here as well, keep pressure on it. And boy, that makes me nervous with this thing. So it's one thing to use it for vacuum because it's actually sucking it in and holding it in place, but the pressure pops it right out. And the only place for that coolant to go is all over me, all over the camera, all over the shop, all over my toolbox. What a mess. All right, so what we're gonna do is hold that for a couple minutes, and we're actually gonna shut it off and just see how it holds. And after this is done, we'll check it over for leaks, and we'll continue on. We won't be able to road test it right away because we have to replace the valve cover gasket. We have a pretty good oil leak up here, and so we need to do that first before we road test it, because all the piping that's needs to go back in place for the road test has to come back off to do the valve cover, and so I don't want to do that twice, so you'll have to wait till afterwards. So we're going to record that as well, and then we'll just keep you updated with how it did with the cooling system. Which it held vacuum for quite a while, and it's holding pressure. Unless we got a minor leak somewhere, I don't suspect anything to be wrong. So in fact, where we were leaking before, we are not leaking now. Our pipe that our hose that we installed is not leaking. I don't see anything dripping down from the block heater. We're good there. Boy, my elbow is on fire. Past couple days, that's just really been bothering me. See what I mean? I don't trust it. Don't trust it. And now we've got a mess. Glad I didn't take it up to 21. Oh, man. Glad I had my hand there. That would have went, I mean, it did go everywhere, but that would have been far worse. All right. Well, got quite a mess to clean up. And so, yeah, lesson learned. Don't trust those universals. Don't trust them at all. Okay. So, yeah, with that, we're going to sign off. I got a mess to clean up. So, it's not the first time a mess has been created in the shop. Sometimes it goes really well. Sometimes you just have a mess. Fortunately, you didn't get out of my zone. Golly, it didn't get up the wall, so that's good. Didn't get on the scan tools over there, so that's good. It did go cover my phone, but did a good wipe down. Looks like you guys are nice and dry now. And, oh wow. I got a big mess to clean up now. We've taken it to the car wash and spraying her down, and then bringing it back here and cleaning it up. So fortunately all my intake stuff was covered up and doesn't look like anything got in it, so that's good. And golly, what a mess. All right. Well, if you like this video, subscribe and like, and what a mess indeed. So while the footage was in post and we're going through it and doing the editing, it turns out what had happened was everything was doing fine until I started reaching around and looking around at the hoses, checking for leaks. And what I had noticed was, after watching it in slow-mo several times, because I wanted to know what happened. And what had happened was I let my hand relax just slightly, and you can see the fitting to start rising. And that's what happened. I just relaxed just enough, and then poof, off it went. So those adapters, I mean, I tried it. I've used them before with pressure testing, and I don't like it. And this is the obvious reason why. And the other thing that was kind of funny was it was almost kind of like a prophetic thing where I was talking about what was going to happen before it happened. I assure you, this was not planned. I absolutely do not enjoy cleaning up coolant, especially in that magnitude. It's messy, it's nasty, it's all over my electronics. Fortunately, the rolly cart here wasn't near it. It did get all over the customer's car, so I had a big clean up there. You can't leave that with them. Tooling, camera, I mean, it was everywhere, and it was all over me as well. So, I mean, basically, I stripped down in the shop and went right into the shower. It was just nasty. And so, no, that wasn't planned, even though it may seem like it was, because it was just a perfect prophecy that happened there. It's one of those learning things where I've used them before, didn't like them, and here I used it, and I really don't like them now. So I'll continue to use it if I need to for doing the vacuum fill procedure, because that's not going to cause it to explode like that. But doing it with pressure, nah, I'm done with that stupid tool. So the best thing that I could have done if I didn't have that tool was, because it's just doing a pressure test, right, is just fill it up and drive it. When you drive it, you're going to get it up to operating temperature anyway, and it's going to apply the pressure. You can check it for leaks after that. It just takes longer. That's the whole point of having that pressure system test after the repair, is so it doesn't take so long to do that. I mean, you should drive it anyway still, but it's just one of those things where it could be a little faster. So if you don't have the right adapter, and instead of risking that mess, just fill it up and just test drive it and get it hot and let the pressure build up on its own. And hopefully you don't get any leaks on the way back. But all right, so what I really wanted to do this posting on was referring to that code that we had earlier, that new code. So what had happened was my verbiage wasn't real clear when I was describing that. So the vehicle was in here, and initially for the coolant leak and the block heater. And so, initially it was here to get a block heater. And when he was getting ready to drop it off, he says, I also have a coolant leak, and can you check that out? So I said, yeah, sure. And so what had happened was there was a heater hose that was leaking, and we couldn't, we had to order it. So it didn't make sense to put a block heater in it and then have to drain the system again to do a heater hose. So we did those at the same time. At the same time, while looking at that, we noticed that there was an oil leak sitting right on top of the left valve cover. And so those parts had to be ordered as well. And so when the truck came back, we did another pre-scan. We did a pre-scan before when it first got here, and this code wasn't there. When it came back and we're starting to do our repairs, we did a pre-scan. And this is why we do pre-scans, because you never know what's going to generate. And so we did a pre-scan again, and now, boom, we have this new code in place. Now, this was nothing related to what was going on before. However, now he came back and the coolant was lower, and he had this code. So keep in mind that coolant was low, and now we got this new code. Well, after researching it, I suspected it had something to do with that jockey pump, because that's what it was referring to. It's a little tiny pump, auxiliary pump, that's mounted in the heater hose circuits. And so researching what that is and what the code does, here it is. So this is the Mitchell on-demand system. And so the P2601 coolant pump ACE control circuit performance stuck off. That's exactly what we had. Here's what triggers the fault. Over temp, over under voltage, impeller stall, impeller speed below minimum speed, internal error. The first one that it lists though is dry run leads to cabin heater coolant pump running without resistance. Now, if we scroll down a little bit, what are possible causes? Well, wiring, cabin heater coolant pump, PCM. The number 2 is low coolant or air in the system. So that coincides directly with the first flag up here, which is a dry run. It's spinning without resistance. So that pump is pulse width modulated by the computer, meaning that it doesn't send full voltage to it right now. It sends it in bursts depending on what the needs are. And this pump only operates in the auto start stop mode. So if you have that type of vehicle, you'll have this pump on there. And what that is that's the feature where you pull up to a stop sign or stoplight, and if the conditions are right with the vehicle, it'll shut the engine off. And then you release the brake and it starts it back up and then you take off. That's what that auto start stop feature is. The coolant pump is there in order, because when you're stopped, what happens with your coolant? It stops flowing. Well, what heats the cabs of vehicles? It's the coolant. It's the hot coolant that's being routed through a heater core inside the cab, and a fan's blowing against that, and that's blowing that hot air. Well, it's blowing air across that hot core, and it's blowing that hot air into the cab. That's how you get your heat. Well, if your engine is stopped, you're going to get heat for a few seconds, and then because it's not moving anymore, that coolant that's in there is going to cool off. It's not going to do any good, and now you're going to get cold air blowing through that. So that coolant pump keeps that coolant flowing through that system. Not necessarily the entire engine, but just that system for sure. It's going to draw enough. Sitting at a stoplight, it's not going to be a big issue. And that's what keeps the heat going while you're stopped and the engine's turned off. So this is what it is. So that the PCM can sense how much voltage drop is happening as that impeller is spinning. And if it's not, because as it's spinning, it's under a load. And if it's under a load, it's dropping more volt, or you're using more oomph, right? And so it senses that, and it knows, hey, this thing is spinning too fast. I'm not losing any voltage here. I don't have enough resistance, and it's got an issue. And so one of the test procedures here is you check it with a scan tool. Does the pump come on? And we would, of course it did. But then it says to go down to step number 6, and you avoid all these other ones. And so here it is. So one of the things it wants you to do is it wants you to watch it. It tells you to go to number 6. Is the engine coolant level within specs? Well, no, it was low, but we're just going to avoid that. Well, let's just say it was. Just say there's actually a problem with the pump. So let's go to number 7. So does the cabin coolant pump turn on? Yes, and it gives you a little description here. If the cabin coolant pump runs for 10 seconds on and 10 seconds off, meaning it's cycling on and cycling off for a certain amount of time, then it says purge the air from the system, because it thinks it's got air in the system. Well, in this case, the system was low, so it surely had air in it. And so that's what was going on. So we didn't do any diag other than replacing the hose, putting the block heater in, filling it back up, and then doing everything we did. And then with the Mount St. Helens thing out of the reservoir, and then after we got that all done, went for our test drive. That code, I cleared that code. That code never came back. Pumps were running beautifully. That's exactly what it was. The reservoir was low, and that's causing the pump to flag a code. Pretty interesting, a little pump flagging a code. And it's all because it senses voltage drop on that pump. It's saying, I'm not losing any voltage because I'm not pulling a load on that pump. It's been way too easy for me. It should be less. I should be seeing less voltage on it on the return, and so it knows to flag the code, and that's exactly what it did. So there you are. So that's the description of what that code was, why it appeared the second time and not the first time. And the fix was just to, fix the coolant leaks, so that way we could top off the coolant and get it back up to spec. And there you go. All right, so with that, if you guys like the video, let us know down in the comments, and we'd appreciate to hear from you. Let us know what you'd like to see. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit the like button. Both of those things help us. If you would like to see more stuff from us, hit the bell, and that'll let you know that things are posted and a new video is on place. So, be sure to watch out for these videos here and here, maybe here and here, and we'll see you guys later.